And I would actually caveat that with saying we can change the world only if we truly understand the problem that we're solving. And this is where Sarah Rosenthaler spoke to around purpose. And we get the privilege of working with entrepreneurs and business leaders who are doing brilliant things in the world, but just haven't taken the steps to define the problem that they're solving. And once they understand the problem that they're solving, they can really understand the extent of the problem. And then that really drives the extent of the impact that they want to have.
You are very welcome to the ScaleX Insider podcast, our platform to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small to medium-sized enterprises to scale with purpose. Each week, as you know, we bring you the best insights from world-class thought leaders and those who have been there and done it. So if you haven't yet subscribed, please take 10 seconds to do so. And as we wrap up season 17, I would like to remind you that if you're serious about scaling your own business with purpose, our ScaleX Accelerator program is now open for applications. It's a 12-month journey designed for ambitious small to medium-sized enterprise leaders who want clarity, capability, and community to scale. You can find all of the details in the show notes below. Now, without further ado, Claire, you're very, very welcome back to the ScaleX Insider podcast. Where have those 3 months gone?
Gone in the blink of an eye. How are you doing?
I'm doing
great to be back.
Oh, well, yeah, look, it's great to have you back. I am doing great. Great to see you. The end of another wonderful season. I feel we touched on all of the principles of scaling in this season with incredible guests. So, as ever, in terms of your reflections for the season, what were they for season 17?
Can you believe it's season 17 for a start? Some great reflections. It was brilliant to hear Nick Bradley back again and Bob Glazer. And just to give them a shout out, because they obviously continue to do their research in the form of publishing a book for us all to enjoy. So brilliant to have them back on again and listening to them. And then, of course, you had your first collaboration, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I loved the conversation style. It was just really relaxed. It was really informative. Obviously, Chad, you had on twice, second time with Dean. Dean Jackson talking about a different topic, but it was highly enjoyable. And as I always say, I shouldn't have favorites, but I'm going to sneak them in at the end. I did have a couple of favorites, always people related, I guess. I loved Liz Wiseman. What a great concept of multipliers and diminishers. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Loved Bob Glazer's work on values. Went down a total rabbit hole whenever I was listening to him. And I know you always call it out. We both enjoy a good framework, but I really loved Billy Bross's light bulb framework, and a definite listen to for anybody who's involved in marketing or branding. So lovely broad variety. Really enjoyed the conversations. Well done.
Thank you. And thank you for calling out the first collaboration we've had on the podcast, certainly the first collaboration hosted virtually. So that was a challenge in itself, but we got there. The two guys are incredible. Dean Jackson, a marketing guru, Chad, just a collaboration champion. He really speaks expertly to our own principle of partnerships, our 9th principle of our 10 principle ScaleX framework. So great to have Dean and Chad on. And I found that episode, if you haven't listened to that episode, I encourage you all to go back and listen to that one. I listened to it again this morning and I found myself stopping every couple of minutes. So no surprise to me at all that you've called out Liz Wiseman. I knew you would love that one, and I knew you would love the Bob Glazer podcast, which really focused on values. And I found that an incredible episode because it's not naturally Bob's domain. You know, he's a serial entrepreneur. He called it out right at the outset. Look, I used to think this values stuff was was really BS in his own language. You know, he now realizes the multiplying effect, which we enshrine in our 10th principle on positive growth culture, the multiplying effect of actually being intentional, not only with how you craft and articulate your values, but more importantly, how you behave and your intentionality around your behaviors aligned to those values. So no surprise at all, we'll go down we'll touch more on both of those wonderful guests as we move through today's episode. But yeah, look, great to have you on again. What for you were some of the emerging themes from season 17?
Well, let's stick with values, shall we? Because values was definitely one of the themes I was picking up multiple times. Obviously, Bob's podcast conversation was all about our values and behaviors, understanding what they are, understanding how they drive our decisions. And he talked about then choosing to spend company with other people who reflect your values. That was brilliant. Nick Bradley also mentioned values, actually, in one of his timeless takeaways. He talked about be clear on your own set of personal values. Richard Harpen also talked about it. He said, come up with your values and behaviors to create the right culture in your team. So it came up quite a few times. Just love the way that Bob described it as our internal compass, you know, guiding our decision making and quietly guiding almost everything that we do. And I had already started to think about this off the back of the last season, where part of my homework was to go away and to take John DeMartini's values test and the 13 questions. So I was thinking about this. And actually, if I may, you know, I've kind of spent time before listening to the podcast thinking about this, because always, you know, I always had a reasonable amount of curiosity around my own personal values and to really understand how they drove my decision making. And I guess somewhere along the line, I had landed on 4. So this was a bit of a test for me. So my 4 values before I started to do these were compassion, inclusion, authenticity, and fun. So that's kind of where I'd landed. I then went on to take John DeMartini's 13 questions. And that actually really helped me to understand what I was prioritizing in my life. And I know the concept sitting behind that is whenever we're spending our time amongst or in or thinking about or doing the top priorities that we value the most, we're going to start to thrive and get a lot back from that. So maybe again, no surprises there, because those top 3 for me were family, business, and friends. All people, really. So you'll remember in Bob Glazer's podcast, he told us about his framework and practically how to help us get started. But he gave us 2 questions. There's 2 questions out of 6 with the view of going and kind of doing the research and so on. So that kind of piqued my interest, and I went and had a little play, but it was on the basis of Bob Glazer's work. And I used my good friend ChatGPT to help me on this. And I simply stuck into ChatGPT, what are some of the behaviors that drive me mad? Sorry, these are the behaviors that drive me mad. So ego, unkind, people who talk a lot, don't take a lot of action, maybe people who over dramatize. And I put those behaviors into AI, and I asked AI, what does that tell you about my values? And it summarized it. It came back and it said, okay, so from that, we see that you value was collaboration and unity, respect, and substance over show. So that was the first part. Secondly, what I then did, again, with inspired by Bob, I then put into ChatGPT, these are the behaviors that light me up. So I put in the likes of authenticity and inclusion and clarity and simplicity and fun, love, compassion, and action. And I said, does that change anything? And it came back and it told me, yes. I actually should name my Chat GPT as Dean and Chad have done. Can't remember the name that they gave her.
I've done that. So Dean's is called Charlotte.
Charlotte. Charlotte was the one.
Yeah.
So I haven't named mine. That will be my homework for the next time. But it actually changed very slightly. And in summary, and again I kind of like something a little bit punchier, but basically it was be real, be kind, make it happen, and enjoy it. And actually, it's a little bit of a full circle, because my original ones were compassion, authenticity, inclusion, and fun. So maybe a different way of describing those, but I just have gone on the most tremendous journey using these tools to really understand, how I ended up there and were they as close as I was going to get them. And thanks to those tools, inspired by Bob and John DeMartini from the last season, I can say to that, yes.
Yes, because Bob says and warns against just one word, values. So, compassion, inclusion, authenticity, fun, and I would challenge you to say, like, you being authentic is you being compassionate, fun, and inclusive. So it's almost, the fact that when you say be authentic, those things, those behaviors, those traits are what I see in you when you're being authentic. So I think compassion, fun, inclusion is all wrapped up in you being authentic. They
Maybe I value it in others as well.
Sure. So, but I love the be real, be kind. What was the third?
Make it happen.
Make it happen. See, you didn't have that in it before, and I would
Mm.
contend that you're much more ambitious than you would like to
Admit.
admit. You're much more ambitious.
I probably am. I know you and I've chatted about this before, but for some reason, I associate ambition and competitiveness with ugly behaviors. So I'm maybe closeted when it comes to ambition and competitiveness.
Yeah, and I would contend there's a difference between being ambitious and being aggressively competitive. So, we contend, and certainly, well, I contend, knowing that lack of ambition of the leader is the single greatest impediment as to why SMEs don't scale, that, our work, at its essence, it's encouraging leaders to be more ambitious. And when you lift the lid on that, that's about being more courageous, about really overcoming their fears or their limiting beliefs in an effort to serve many more than what they're currently serving. For me, that's much more praiseworthy than associating ambition with being aggressively competitive. That's just my little
And
contention.
maybe that's my next rabbit hole to ask myself why.
I, so let me know next season how that therapy goes. We'll pick that up. Be real, be
Okay.
kind, make it happen. I'm delighted that make it happen is in there. And the fourth one is actually have enjoyment in doing all of those things. So those are great. I love that make it happen is there. Okay, so let's make this podcast happen. Values and behaviors, one theme. What was the second theme?
Yes, sorry, brilliant to get stuck into values and behaviors, and that came up multiple times. Another thing that I have started to hear more and more frequently, and it came this time, it came from all the Aussies that you spoke to. I've heard this actually from Daniel Priestley in the past, and picked up a statement which says, which really emphasizes the difference entrepreneurs can make in the world. So Natasha Hawker, she says, as entrepreneurs, we have the ability to change the world for the better. Nick Bradley also said entrepreneurship has the ability to change the world, and he invited us all to step into the arena. And I've heard Daniel Priestley talking before. So I love this view, maybe cultural, maybe coming from Australia, who knows? But it's a really powerful statement, and a really empowering, really encouraging statement to think that actually it's so far removed from people who are just going in, showing up, doing what they do, going home, picking up their paycheck. Whenever you position it like people in business can change the world, solve meaningful problems, and change the world.
Love it. And I would add to that, entrepreneurs with ambition can change the world. So we know that 99% of businesses by volume are SMEs, and more than 70% of people who work actually work for an SME leader. So the ripple effect here of leaders scaling with purpose is significant when they harbor that ambition, lean into it, and actually bring their product or service, which is solving a meaningful problem or servicing a need, to a much wider audience. Love it. Anything else to say there in relation to that theme?
Yes, well, we get to see it all the time. And I would actually caveat that with saying we can change the world only if we truly understand the problem that we're solving. And this is where Sarah and Rosenthaler spoke to around purpose. And we get the privilege of working with entrepreneurs and business leaders who are doing brilliant things in the world, but just haven't taken the steps to define the problem that they're solving. And once they understand the problem that they're solving, they can really understand the extent of the problem. And then that really drives the extent of the impact that they want to have. And we get to facilitate that. So we know what it feels like to hear a business leader's penny drop whenever all of a sudden it's like, yes, this is what I'm trying to do. It's like real punch the air stuff.
Completely agree. And I loved Sarah Rosenthaler's exercise to get at the nub of your company's purpose. And the challenge that we typically have with entrepreneurs who come into our world is their belief that in some way, if they create a purpose, it's fabricated, it has to be corporate, it's, you know, sometimes it can be seen as purpose washing. And Sarah offered this wonderful exercise, which was to invite your team in, and you can start and do this with your leadership team to begin with, and ask them to bring an object that represents meaningful work that they're really proud of, that they've completed within your business in the last, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and just let them describe that work and why that was deeply meaningful to them. When you do this, it's so wonderfully enriching. We've done this with our team. I mean, it just lights you up. It's very, very powerful. And what you'll find is a thread which brings all of the respective stories about what is meaningful to each member of your team together into something that will represent your overall organizational purpose. So I love that exercise.
Yeah, the exercise, certainly you instigated it in one of our team meetings after hearing it on the podcast. And it was really, really impactful. And there were simple little examples given. It wasn't kind of, people didn't struggle too hard to find an object which was really meaningful to them. It could have been anything from a notebook to a medal, to a variety of other different things. And it was just something that really, I guess, exemplified the journey that they had been on and why it was so important to them and what it really meant to them. And it was very moving.
Yeah, completely agree. So I love those themes. The entrepreneurs can change the world and values and behaviors. So 2 themes in terms of the messages that set underneath those themes. Is there anything that really stood out for you? Anything that provided a new frame by which you see the world, by which you see scaling? Can you share with our listeners what was strong for you in terms of the messaging that sat underneath those themes?
Brilliant. Okay, well, we're going to go straight to Liz Wiseman.
You
And
couldn't wait.
oh wow, it was so powerful. But she gave a brilliant reframe, and she said instead of thinking about letting go, and we know how difficult it is for business leaders to wrap their head around relinquishing a bit of control in their business. So instead of thinking about letting go, think about bringing people in. So a real sense of, so different from losing control, and instead shifting the brain to think about what we're gaining instead. So I just thought that was brilliant.
I
Uh,
loved that. I loved how she helped completely reframe that. The metaphor often used for a business leader letting go is, handing over their baby.
yes.
And when I shared that, she said, "Well, no, let's reframe this. Instead of handing across the baby to somebody else who's going to go away with your baby, actually think of you continuing to cradle your baby, but you're inviting the rest of the village in to support you in the rearing of this baby, in the nourishment of this baby, in the ability to expose this baby to a diversity of thinking, to help develop this baby." So I absolutely love that.
Do you know what actually makes you question whoever came up with the analogy of handing your baby across to somebody else? Of course you're going to be full of anxiety and think that you're losing something, this precious little thing that you're handing over to somebody else. Whereas in reality, just as you said there, it takes a lot of support. It takes a whole ecosystem around a family to input and invest in growing this little human being.
Yeah, let's commit to getting this out there, because certainly that analogy, that metaphor of kind of handing across your baby is endemic within entrepreneurial communities. So let's kind of leverage Liz's work to reframe what it is to scale a business, which is, rather than letting anything go, it's actually letting people in to support bringing your wonderful product or service to a wider audience. Absolutely love that you've called that out, Claire. So diving into Liz's work a bit further, because I know this work lit you up.
I'm, yes, absolutely sticking with Liz here. Loved the concept of multipliers and diminishers. And I just love the simplicity around how Liz has come up with these behaviors through just simple observation, through working with leaders, through watching what they do and seeing whether it lights somebody's eyes up, or whether it actually, takes a little bit of their energy away. So it was just absolutely brilliant. I think one of the things that really struck me was that she said those who display multiplier behaviors get more than 100% of the potential from their team. And as a diminisher, or somebody who displays diminishing behaviors, can lose up to 50% of that. But the scary thing is, she also introduces the concept of accidental diminishers. And we are all guilty of that. Certainly, I made a list of the 8 behaviors, the 8 diminishing behaviors. And I know you're going to think I'm going to use this to poke you.
Go on
Uh,
ahead, call it out, call it out, because as she was going through these, I felt this crushing inside. If it was a game, I would have lit up the entire board. If it was a game of diminishing bingo, I would have had a full house.
you would have.
So. I absolutely check. I would
Well,
have absolutely won. So what did you
I'm a victim.
recognize? Well, I can't see that, but let's. I'll allow you to. I'll permit you to share with everyone. What are some of my diminishing behaviors?
You want me to do this live?
Go
Are you
ahead. Go
sure?
ahead. This is
All right.
great feedback. You've always said feedback is gold.
I wish I had more time to prepare this. Okay, so the first one she talks about, which I think is very relevant to you, the idea fountain, where you're always coming up with ideas, and maybe more ideas than people can execute which sometimes can serve as a distraction.
Guilty as
Just
charged.
one punch in the face. This is terrible.
Go ahead.
Okay. You tell me when to stop. The always on leader. The always on leader. And that can be draining. She says that can be draining. I'm going to pick up the third one here and share this, because she talked about the rescuer, and she said people who jump in to help, and that's actually not very helpful at all, because it stops people thinking for themselves. She talked about the pace setter. Whenever you take on that role as pace setting, and I see you smirking there, this is another one for you. She says others can become spectators. The protector, I'm picking this one up. The protector offers comfort and shade, but as we all know, nothing grows in the shade or in your comfort zone. The optimist, probably a little bit of that. You probably have a little bit of that as well, I would say. And sometimes if you're overly optimistic, you can overlook the struggle. And then finally, number 8, there's a couple of missed out there. Number 8 is the perfectionist. And you're definitely taking this one, when it's never good enough.
So that's 5-3. I am an absolute accidental diminisher winner. Thanks, Claire.
I have to let you into a little secret as well, because during your conversation with Liz, you talked about giving your team permission to call you out if you displayed any diminishing behaviors. And actually, Liz backed it up, and she said, whenever you can talk openly about your diminishing behaviors, it gives your team the opportunity to kind of flag it without consequence. So I went off and I bought a set of football referee cards. There was red and there was yellow. And on the basis that you gave me permission, I was going to bring it into our team meetings. But my family got their sticky little hands on it before I got them. And they couldn't work out who the football referee cards were for. So they put them in the bin. So I'm going to have to go and order more, but I'm still taking the permission. And Liz will back me up on this.
Thanks, family Colvin, for binning the cards. Thank you.
There we go. So how many times do we think we're helping, and actually we're diminishing the performance of our teams? And those, I've seen them all, and she so eloquently defines all 8 behaviors. And I think that is something that we all need to be more aware of. So loved her work.
Very powerful. In all seriousness, this is something that we will certainly adopt and integrate into our existing feedback system once we've shared the multiplier diminisher framework with our team. I think it's wonderful. Again, language and labels to help create awareness and understanding. Really, really powerful. So any other messages? Are we moving away from Liz now? Is it safe to move away from Liz? Any other messages that set underneath the themes of entrepreneurs can change the world and values and behaviors?
I have 2 more that stood out personally for me. One of them was with your collaboration with Chad and Dean, and it actually was in the topic of AI. And this is whenever probably dropped more than ever with me. But it was either Chad or Dean said, imagine you had someone who's 3 feet away from you at all times, who has a PhD in everything and is available to you at all times. And he went on to say it's embarrassing how little we would interact with that person. So the penny really dropped with me around AI. And I guess I took a little bit of time to think about how I would use AI. And I wouldn't say I'm scratching the surface. You know, I have a long journey to go on AI, but I loved that Billy Bross said, use AI to poke holes in your product. And I really like that, because many of us will turn to AI to find ways to do things and to enable us, but actually we don't really use it for evaluation and thinking about how we could actually make things better. So some brilliant tips in there, I feel, around AI.
Yeah, I completely agree. And using it as a challenger to your ideas is actually a powerful enabler, because in the safety of your own environment, in the safety of and protection away from judgment of others, you can actually share an idea and really go to town on that idea. It's something that I do with my virtual board on AI. I've shared with you before, and I found it very, very useful just to prompt AI to not only provide support for the idea, but actually can they challenge that? Now, can they counter that? And what you get is the both sides. And I'm thinking of the work of Michael Gelb, who I interviewed way back, the expert on the 7 principles of Leonardo da Vinci, perceived as the world's greatest genius, born 500 years ago. But one of those principles was sfumato, an Italian word for this ability to hold counter arguments with equal weight. And when you can do that with AI, you can listen to both arguments without getting emotionally attached to one or the other. So it enables this ability to conduct yourself in accordance with this sfumato principle. So
I love that. I love that, and really challenging to do for a black and white thinker, somebody who's got to conclude something all the time, as opposed to carrying the weight of 2 potentially controversial ideas at the same time.
sure, especially if it's your idea.
Wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, even more so.
if you've proposed the idea already, you're emotionally invested in it. So it's very challenging often to counter that idea in your own head, but to invite your AI partner to do that is powerful and safe, because you're not exposing yourself or feeling that you have to emotionally resist the counter argument and being exposed to others in your team. But that's very powerful. And an exercise we often invite people to do in a leadership setting is actually where there is a decision required around an idea, regardless of who's proposed the idea. Everyone has to take time to argue in favor of the idea. And then when that's complete, we take 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever the time allocated is considered appropriate, and then provide equal time to argue the challenge to it. And what you end up with this kind of equally balanced position to allow and enable an objective decision to move forward. So I love that, Claire.
I'm sitting here feeling sorry for your AI.
It works very hard, I have to say. Solus is the name of my AI partner. Solus, which is an Irish word for light. So I lean on the light very often. There we go.
Solus.
Any other messages coming through?
One last one, and I'm delighted to say I don't know the name of your personal trainer, but this one is going to him. Because you very kindly shared the story of going to show your personal trainer photograph of the body you wanted whenever you were coming 50. And his question back to you was brilliant. And he said, are you interested or are you committed? And actually, the conversation you were having with Derek Coburn went on to explore Derek asked us to think about the bigger reason that sits behind our desire to scale or otherwise. And he said, whenever it shows up, we tend to lock in and commit. And it actually got me thinking, I think I've maybe shared with you before, always thinking about the reason why I went into business, the reason why we set up our business, and the reason why we have decided to scale. And mine dates way back to my school years. And I would very honestly say I went to school to make friends. And my love for learning only came whenever I was learning at the same time that I was working. And I started to realize, hang on a second, all this learning is making me better at what I do. And from that moment on, I was testing myself. It's always been a test. can I take on this role? Can I pick up this challenge? Can I integrate into this? Can I be a business owner? Can I? So it's always been a test. And I think, I actually had a friend one night, she was 3 margaritas up, and she grabbed my face and looked me in the eye. And she just said, just stop. She said, it's enough. And it was almost like, she could see what was happening. But it was, if I'm presented with something, I will always make it work to prove to myself that I either can or I can't do it. So that's really, I found that really, really interesting to really understand the reason that sits behind why you push on.
Yeah. What's coming through for me there whenever you say that, it's an old saying from a self-development guru, Jim Rohn, who said, don't become a millionaire for the riches it provides. Become a millionaire because of the person you will become in trying to become a millionaire. And I think that's strongly analogous to why we are so passionate about encouraging business leaders, SME business leaders, to scale with purpose. Don't scale with purpose because of the riches that it will invariably provide, but scale with purpose because of the person and leader that you will become as a result of that endeavor.
Great quote. Great quote. And we would hear it coming from others, that we work with, that they just ask themselves the question, why not us?
Yeah, absolutely. That comes back to Sharon Lachter's work, who I had in the podcast. I think it was maybe, again, one of the earlier seasons, season 4, season 5. When people say, why would I do that? Why would I lean into scaling? And her question was straight back, why not? And if not you, then who?
Yeah.
So brilliant. You're invoking all sorts of memories here, Claire, from your feedback, the messages that have come through to you strongly from this season. So anything else before we come to really checking in on the commitments that you've made from the last season?
Lots of messages, but those were the ones that stood out the most for me, I think. Yeah, so we can get stuck straight into the homework.
Brilliant. Okay, remind the listeners again of what the homework was. What did you commit to do at the end of season 16's wrap up?
So one half, there was 2 commitments I made, and I have to admit I've only half my homework done, teacher. I did my John Demartini's value assessment, and I found that quite interesting. I actually tried not to think about it too much and answer the questions just off the cuff. So that was good. And the one that I haven't got to do just yet is Ilse Kahn's 14 scripts. And that involved you, my friend, whenever we're going to choose a deeper conversation so that we can feel the marrow of our bones. Feel it in the marrow of our bones. So I'm going to carry that one over to the next season. And this time I have 2 commitments. And this first one is inspired by Richard Harpin. And I'm going to go off and find me a great mentor. And
good on you.
I've had a coach for a number of years, and she is wonderful. And I think over the years as well, I've had great mentors. But it wasn't until Richard talked about it, I just kind of, I guess I reflected on it, and I thought now is maybe a good time for me to find a mentor. And he suggested asking for 1 or 2 hours of their time. And people will do that. So I'm actually off to, you interviewed Sam Smith last season, and she's got a female founders growth summit in Scotland next week. So I'm off there. I've actually connected with some great women in advance of going, and I'm going with a mission to walk away and find me a great mentor, great female mentor.
I love that. That. Great. Find yourself a mentor.
That's one. And the second one then, actually inspired by Nick Bradley, and this is probably one I'd love to explore with you a little bit further. Nick talked about your horizontal and your vertical players in the context of private equity and acquisitions and scaling. And I would just love to give that a good old explore with you, who are horizontal players, who are vertical players, and just do a bit of a brainstorm.
Love that. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And you have also triggered the desire in me as well to actually engage with a mentor. I always have a coach and or a mentor on the go. I completed a session with my coach probably 3 months ago now, and I haven't engaged with a coach. So I have a coaches for different areas of my life. The obviously physical fitness. I tend to always have a coach on the go. I like to change up my workout routines. That came to an end, and I tend to have a business mentor, someone that I can collaborate with. And I do have a wonderful collaborator or mentor where we meet once a month, we reverse mentor one another, but I have
I love him too.
but I have no one. He's to be honest, just a wonderful
Yeah.
guy, and but I have no one.
Give him a shout out,
Mr. Morris,
Mr.
Patin, who
Morris. What a giver.
yeah, he's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And every time we have a session, he will feed back to me like with this wonderfully written prose of support, of advice, of recommendations, and he's just championing everything that I do. And I
Cares
always
about you.
genuinely,
Yeah.
so a great guy. And we had the chance to catch up whenever he was in London back in the summer. So Morris, thank you. There we go. Okay, so anything you're going to do differently as a result of this season's podcasts?
Well, just really find my mentor and just get a bit of clarity around the horizontal and vertical players. So those are the two things that I will take away to do differently to move me on a bit.
Brilliant. Okay, and as we approach the wrap up, what were your 3 favorite timeless takeaways this season?
Okay, so no surprises. My first one is being attributed to lovely Liz. And this is brilliant. She says, you can start a company with genius, but to grow and scale it, you need genius makers. So that was brilliant. Highlights the importance of developing your people, which, as you know, is an area of passion for me. So that's the first one. Then the second favorite takeaway came from Bob Glazer. And actually, I'm condensing his 3 takeaways into one. But he just defined this really well. He said, understand what you value in life, make decisions that are based on those, and choose carefully the company you keep to allow you to continue to thrive in line with your values. And the third one, I think this actually was a quote. This was mentioned. I think this might have been a quote by Abraham Lincoln. It's not the years in our life, it's the life in our years. So again, highlighting the importance of living a very full, meaningful life instead of maybe clocking up and accumulating the number of years. Let's make the most of it because we're only here once.
Here. Claire, thank you as ever. I love this conversation. It has flown. Love your insights, your takeaways. It's always really enriching for me when you share your perspective, which is typically different from my own, albeit that we're absolutely aligned on our values. So thank you. I look forward to seeing you again at the end of season 18 in December. But in the meantime, take care.
Keep going. Brilliant. Thank you.